Welcome to Hot Garbage Sports. I'm Coach Ryan D. The NHL has a cultural problem. And the cultural problem I am speaking of has sparked the Tom Wilson incident, which has resulted in the injury to Artemi Panarin. And the cultural issue I'm talking about is an identity crisis. The NHL doesn't know what it wants to be. It has no clue. I'm really passionate about the game of hockey. I love athletes. I love big, tough, strong hockey. I love violent sports. Combat, mixed martial arts, football, hockey, I am in. I am really passionately engaged with the opinion piece that I have here. It is a longer video. Stick with me all through the end if you are passionate about hockey and about the game changing or not changing. Should it be a traditionalist game? Should it move to the new game? Was this a good hit? Was this a bad hit? Stick with me through the end because my opinion is an opinion, but it is a passionate one. And just watch at about the 16-minute mark of the video, I'm going to give you something that gives me goosebumps. When I'm playing a game, when I'm watching a game, just the game of hockey, I am so engaged in. I love this game and things they make the hair on my arm stand up. And there are just moments in this game that are fantastic, beautiful, and they just enthrall you into this. So if you are passionate, if you are fired up about this, if you were on social media about this, you don't want to miss this. You don't want to miss the take. You want to be part of this discussion down below and you want to stick with us. And if you want to grow with a new channel, if you want to be a part of alternative opinion takes, if you want to be a part of a place where every comment you say will get responded to, then Hot Garbage Sports and Coach Ryan D is your guy. Subscribe down below. Hit a like. Let's roll the intro. And let's get into this Tom Wilson mockery of the best game on the face of the planet.
Here's Lemieux. The center penalty coming up. Look at Lemieux. Oh, my God. What a goal. Oh, baby.
Okay, so what happened? In some people's opinion, Tom Wilson crossed the line. He took a cheap shot against a player on the Washington Capitals, a player that was unprotected, unassuming, and on the ice and unable to defend himself. And then he proceeded to attack one of the NHL's greatest superstars who was no longer wearing a helmet, throw him to the ice in a very dangerous situation, and cause Artemi Panarin to lose the rest of the regular season, which sounds worse than it is because it is 3 games left in the regular season, but it's still bad. There's no such thing as a good injury when you're looking at a case like this. So as you can see here, it's tough to watch because Tom Wilson clearly has a helmetless Artemi Panarin and he's in the middle of throwing him to the ice. And I mean, is it Tom Wilson's fault that Panarin's not wearing a helmet? No. Is it Tom Wilson's fault and responsibility to take care of his actions and not purposely try to injure somebody to this level? Yes. I mean, Tom Wilson still has his gloves on. This isn't a squared up fight. This is tough to watch. And unfortunately, I can't show the full clip here to do copyright purposes, but I think you can imagine what happens when he hits the ice. If you come from a background of hockey and an understanding of this game to the level that myself, some of the subscribers, people who are going to be watching it do, behavior like that, as shocking as it seems, is not really that surprising. We grew up with it. I was born in the 80s. I played the game when it was a clutch and grab game, and I watched it transition to a speed and a skill-based game. Watched the game grow leaps and bounds across North America. And even in its growth, the game of hockey has managed to only barely hold its position as the 7th, maybe 8th most popular watched event in North America, mostly driven by the Americans' lack of popularity with it, as well as the world's lack of popularity with hockey. We know we have the 5 big hockey nations, but outside of that, it's really struggled to gain ground. And I think one of the reasons it's struggled to gain ground is it is very hard for someone either new to this game or who didn't grow up in the culture of hockey, meaning you've played, you've coached, or you were born in one of the big cities, the powerhouse cities, Toronto, Boston, Detroit, Vancouver, Edmonton. You may not have played, but you grew up in a place where hockey is likely the number 1, if not the number 2 or 3 sport. It's the thing to do, so you understand it. You understand the culture of the game, the enforcers, the fights, where the game has been and where the game is going. Tom Wilson getting a 10-minute misconduct and a 4-minute major for roughing based on how the NHL rules are written and my understanding of those rules is likely a correct call. You can make a justification for a 5-minute major based on the injury sustained by Artemi Panarin, but it's what we call a scrum at the end of the play. And the definition of the rule of roughing states, well, it's roughing. It's throwing punches, face washes, or excessive use of violence in a scrum or during gameplay. The 10-minute misconduct and the fact that he got 4 based on what the referees would have seen at high speed makes sense to me. Am I saying that's what the call should have been? I am not. But that's a rules problem, in my opinion. And that is a culture problem of how referees are given the ability to enforce the rules. What do I mean? Referees are given the discretion to, as they would say, let the boys play, allow flow to the game, allow the boys to handle themselves. The first thing that makes the NHL level different, though, than any other level of hockey as we attack the culture of the sport and why this happened is that at the NHL, these are people getting paid millions of dollars and signing waivers to do a job. No, they're not soldiers. They're not going to war. They're not police officers protecting us. They're not MMA fighters getting in a cage, but they sign up for a level of risk that you take on playing a game where players can skate 14 to 40 miles per hour, shoot a 105 mile an hour rubber disc with knives on your feet and a weapon in your hands. We know you are signing up for a tough, physical, dangerous game that one wrong move can end in catastrophic injury. However, there is a cultural battle in the NHL as to how those rules should be enforced and what the game should actually be doing on a go forward. 20 years ago in the NHL, you had enforcers, fighters, tough guys. There was also a very clear-cut, acceptable level of clutch, grab, and physicality behind the play and within the play that was accepted and written into the rule books. Just go look at any Scott Stevens hit. That is banned by today's standards. Back in those days, it was just a great, clean check, ended careers. The game has come a far place. But one thing that's never really made sense to me is the fact that the game doesn't seem to understand what it wants to be. If it is a skill and a speed game, as they say, where we are going to advertise scoring, the day of the enforcer is gone, the day of the fourth line player is gone, Marty McSorley, Bob Probert are gone, and the players don't have sheriffs to police themselves, then why are there still scrums after the whistle? Why are face washes and errant punches called as roughing? In the NFL, it's an automatic game ejection. And I would argue almost to the death that the NFL is a much more violent game than the NHL. What makes the NHL more dangerous is the usage of the stick and the speed at which the contact may make with the player, especially the head. If you disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments, but I've played both and it hurts. Rugby is very similar in the sense it's a very punishing game. Hockey, though, for all of its physicality, the term body checking is used in the game in 2020 and taught to players as a means to remove player from puck. The reason body checking is in the game is to separate the player from the puck so an offensive play can ensue and go the other way. Hockey today, making a hit or following up your check, as they used to call it, what they used to say is after the player moved the puck, you had a 3-second count to lay the bod. That's not true anymore. You get a penalty for that. The player must have the puck in order to lay body. You can't lay a hit after every time the player moves, and sometimes you don't want to because it puts you and your teammates out of position to play a 4-on-4 game, which can be more dangerous in terms of getting goals scored on you. So the game has changed. The zero tolerance to rules have changed. And if we look at certain rules, such as the slash on the hands, too many players were breaking fingers. They decided to enforce the rule. We had a tough go this year, and, well, I don't see slashes to the hands anymore. But the rest of the rules, cross-checking, interference, roughing, checks from behind, boarding, they are very clearly defined, but the amount of discretion that the referees use means they're not applied equally. And they're not applied equally to all situations. And even worse, you have scenarios where referees decide purposely to not let that play, to not blow the play dead with a whistle. They know it, the player knows it, and what ends up happening is frustration brews. The player gets upset. Soon as I get hit, whether it's, I don't care if it's a beer league game, a CHL game, or a pro game, soon as a foul is occurred to me and I see the referee do this, I immediately calm down. My emotions settle. I'd say I'm a well-adjusted normal human being. We'll talk about Tom Wilson in a minute. And the game proceeds. I feel okay about that because he's getting a penalty. He created a fraction. It's a foul. Move to the box. My team gets an advantage. We're looking to score. But when that doesn't happen, and it happens so much due to the interpretation of letting the boys play, it's a physical game. It's not interfering with the flow of the play. It frustrates players. So we have no idea at what point in that game, but I guarantee you somewhere in that game, something happened that pissed Tom Wilson off to a level where he was just seeing red. He was. And you can say, okay, well, the Washington Capitals player stuck the goalie. If the whistle hasn't gone, it's a fair play within the rules. You can't touch your goalie. That's the culture of hockey. You're going to pay the price. That's street justice. And that's been acceptable in the game of hockey for quite a long period of time. But now we see what happens when you interpret what that street justice looks like. Some it's a good, clean check. Some it's a square up fight. Others it's a cheap shot to the face when a man is looking. Very hard when you're seeing red and you're pissed off to be able to determine what is morally correct. Especially when you're like Tom Wilson and for your entire career have been praised and encouraged to play with an edge and play with a violent edge. If anything, it attracts a player like Tom Wilson into the game. And do not think for a minute that Tom Wilson is not a good hockey player. He's extremely talented. Every team in the NHL would want him on their team. He plays on the first line for a reason. But Tom Wilson, whether it be through midget hockey or through junior hockey or through the pros, at some point was praised for his physical play and his ability to change a game because he is scary. He is scary. I've played against guys like this. There are players like Tom Wilson, other players in the NHL that just, they don't feel pain. Not the way I normally would feel it. They're not afraid. They love the conflict. They're not backing down. Their bones feel like they're calcified 10 times more than the average human being. Their muscles feel stronger. They may be big men, but they feel even bigger than they actually are. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing. As a regular player in any of these leagues, you're not going to beat him. You're not going to beat Tom Wilson in a fight unless your name's Ryan Reeves. You're not going to beat him when he's got a full head of steam, and you're not going to make him afraid. So course correcting him is almost impossible. And then what ends up happening on a play like that is the danger of when you lose your helmet, smashing your head on the ice becomes real and death becomes possible. And I think that's why everybody is so upset with Artemi Panarin. He could die by being thrown to the ice like that. He's not a player that engages in this. There's a code, if you will, a made up code. It's there, but it's not written down. It's made up code where you're not supposed to touch Panarin. And we talk about keeping tough guys in the game and fighting in the game and scrums after the game because traditional hockey fans want to see that. And there's nothing wrong with being a traditional hockey fan. Nothing. I'm not telling you you're a bad person at all. I've grown from it. 10 years ago, I can tell you, fighting, I thought it needed to be in the game. The physicality, the enforcer, the protector, I thought it needed to be in the game. I have outgrown it. And I've outgrown it because the NHL has slowly shown me. Junior hockey has evolved to slowly start showing me it is far from perfect. The Olympics and the World Juniors have shown me that what I actually really crave is the competition of sports and men and women getting fired up, baby. Fired up. When something happens and you don't like it, you don't go throw a punch in those leagues. You don't go scrum. You don't go take extra penalties because the IIHF will put you in the box like that. You go to your bench, you fire up your superstars, and you say, let's go, boys. Let's get this next goal. And you can't tell me if you're a USA or a Canada hockey fan or anywhere in the world that you don't just get fired right up when your team comes back and just hammers it into the back of the net, skating by the bench, waving the flag. Baby, up yours. You want to play cheap? We'll put one in the back of the net. And then they do it again and again. Oh, nothing gets you more fired up than just watching your team, your group, just hammer them into the ground with goals. Offensive zone pressure, clap bombs from every angle in the goalie's face, shot after shot after shot. That's how you punish somebody in this game today, in my opinion. But there's still this era of scrum and push and shove and face wash, which I frankly think looks dumb. A battle in front of the net is a battle, but when that whistle goes, I would love to see some enforcement like you get in the NFL where, go ahead, touch him after the whistle, 15 yards, automatic major penalty in the NFL. I would love to see that in the NHL. Zero tolerance. Whistle, done. End of story. Somebody comes in the box. It'll be frustrating for a little bit, sure. The game will evolve. The game will evolve to places like we see at the Olympics and the World Juniors where you just get fired up because you're not sending enforcers out. You're not sending guys out I don't want to see, low-skilled players to deal with Tom Wilson. Tom Wilson's a high-skill player. Now you got to play a low-skill player against him. He'll torch you. And then he'll laugh at you the whole way as he gets to the bench and score a goal. You send out your scorers and you put one in on him. That's what I like to see. There is no place in the game for what Tom did, but let's talk about the rules. What rule are you going to enforce for this other than the intention to injure somebody? Did Tom have intention to injure somebody? Yeah, I think he did. I think a screw went loose in Tom Wilson's head. I don't think he has a screw loose. I think he has the propensity to have a screw go friggin' loose because you can see it in his eyes. I can see it in the way he plays. When that man sees red, he just sees red and he is going out to hurt you. He's mad. He's not going out with an intent to back up his teammates. He is now seeing red, and it is him versus you. It does not matter who it is. It does not matter if you're the player that committed the foul or not. He's taking your head off. And that's what he did. That's what he did. When you see players grab guys in a scrum and pull them off and they slam their head on the ice, it's hard to watch. But what ends up happening? Why is the NHL doing it? Well, when these things get hits on social media, when they get passed around like crazy, like this content has been, it fires everybody up. Everyone's talking about the NHL. This is the most tweeted, talked about, reviewed segment in hockey. They're not talking about the fact that the Habs just beat the Leafs in overtime. They're not talking about the fact that the Jets just got crushed by the Senators and are falling down the standings. They're talking about Tom Wilson. The problem with this is you are not retaining, in my opinion, I don't have data on this, but I don't believe you're retaining fans by talking to them about this. You're highlighting a sideshow, a gong show, if you will. No new fan is going to be enthralled and taken in because they saw this act of violent aggression against an unassuming opponent. This isn't the UFC where it's two gladiators in the middle of the cage, and I love fighting. Don't get me wrong. You want to send comments down that I'm soft? Go for it. But I adore fighting. I adore when two men want to sign up, willingly battle and fight. But I have evolved from thinking that a place like hockey is where I want to see fights to I want to see them in the boxing ring. I want to see them in a UFC ring. That's where I want to see fights. I honestly can't stand hockey fights anymore from an entertainment perspective because I have become such a fan of the UFC. I love it. Two professional athletes beating the hell out of each other in a game of chess, physical, violent chess. I love it. When I see two guys trading punches on the ice, whatever. Those guys compared to a guy in the UFC ring, not a real tough guy. And if you think they are, that's great. There's different definitions of tough. But a trained fighter, that's what I want to see. And I want to see him against an equally trained fighter. In hockey, the only thing I see nowadays when two players take off their helmets and go to fight is I'm waiting for the one player to fall, smash his head, and crack it open. When I watch kids in junior these days get tapped on by the back of their coach and said, go deal with them. That happened. That happened to us. If you aren't a hockey player, if you are, you know this, but your coach, if you are not one of the top three players, would tap you on the back and say, go handle number 3. A child, put this in perspective, a 16, 17-year-old kid was told to go take off his protective equipment, mouth guard, put brain and concussion at risk to go beat somebody up for no money. They're not paid. They're trying to get paid and assuming concussions and risk for no reason other than the fact that it's tradition and part of the game. When you focus on tradition and the way things used to be, you stop yourself from moving forward. We don't want to live in the past. Things evolve, they get better. And the game of hockey is getting better, much better, every day. But when you see things like this, it just reminds you that it's just, And when you see the reactions on social media, from what I see, it's 75% thinking this is disgusting. A $5,000 fine and he's playing next game. And the Rangers don't have a fighter. It's not like the Rangers are going to pull anybody in to correct this. They can't. There is nobody. And if they do, great. Like I said, it's a guy coming from the AHL. This is a first-line player. I don't know what they do. They're a young, entertaining, skilled team. The Rangers are drawing eyes right now because if anyone asked me, we're a hockey fan, said, Ryan, I want to get into hockey. What should I watch? I'd tell them, watch the Rangers. They're fun. They're a very exciting, fun, young team to start. Be a Rangers fan for now. Go for it. That's who you'd want to cheer for. They're building a really great team. And then they just get stonewalled by this Goomba. You're not going to retain fans through that. That's my opinion on it. If you disagree, please let me know down below. Keep it polite, though. I'm not attacking any traditionalists of hockey. I used to be there. I get it. And if you're not ready to move forward, you're not ready to move forward. But I truly believe the reason places like the NBA and lately Major League Baseball, which just overtook the NBA, are growing is because they are evolving their game to appeal to a wider audience and a younger audience daily. The NHL is mirrored in tradition of small town Canada, which is great, but it needs to move past that and evolve if it wants to continue to grow, because these eyes that are seeing Tom Wilson now are getting social media clicks, but it won't bring attention to the game. No new fan, in my opinion, is going to become an NHL fan because of this hit. The game is not going to grow. And we are too afraid as a culture of hockey people to allow this stuff to fully exit the game because we think the traditionalist fans are going to run away and stop watching. I hate to say it, but Hockey Night in Canada ain't cutting it anymore. It's boring. I love watching my team, but the broadcast itself is boring. The panel is boring. The sport before and after is boring. This is an opinion. If you enjoy it, that's great. I'm not speaking for everybody. Where sports is going is online into social media. People want different angles. They want different opinions. The reason YouTube channels like this grow is because people want alternative takes and they want to consume their sports digitally when they want it, how they want it, and they want the sport moving forward. I mentioned it before. The NBA did a Marvel Avengers night. I thought it was going to be a joke. I'm a 34-year-old curmudgeon going, how the hell is this going to entertain? And I was mind blown. It was the most entertaining thing I ever seen. Super fun. Had a great time. Wow. Check out the game. Super fun. I don't know how they made something so cheesy so fun. The NHL doesn't do that. You're not even allowed to wear your cool warm-up jerseys during the game. It doesn't make sense. So back to Tom Wilson. He grew up in a culture that praised him for doing what he does. He's talented and he's skilled. The rules of the NHL allow for this type of behavior, and the norms and culture of the NHL expect it in the scrums, in the tough guy, in the violent sport. And I think hockey should be tough. But tough has a relative meaning. Hitting a guy when he's down, not looking, is not tough. Grabbing Panarin by the neck when he's not looking is not tough. Tough is taking a hit from Ryan Reeves, getting back up and scoring a goal. Tough is taking a 100-mile-an-hour slap shot in the teeth and coming back into the game. Tough is continuing to get hit night after night, week after week, and playing. Tough is Patrice Bergeron with a broken rib winning a Stanley freaking Cup. That's tough. Tough is sometimes shutting up and walking away and allowing the other team to get riled up so they take a penalty so your team can go and score. Swallowing your pride or your manliness to do what's best for the team. That's tough. I like tough. I don't like cheap. And I think this was cheap. But I also can't blame the action completely on one person. I know some people can, and that's fine. Tom Wilson needs to be in control of Tom Wilson. No one else can control Tom Wilson but Tom Wilson. If you take that opinion, that's okay. But I take the opinion that Tom Wilson was created. He may have always had certain violent tendencies or an air of ego or bravado, if you will. But if the rules were enforced the way the rules are actually written, and the culture of the game from the time he played at probably age 13 or 14 did not reward him for this type of behavior, because it does. In junior hockey, especially if cameras aren't rolling, this plays. The arena goes nuts. Go into a dressing room, talk about your buddy, call him a pussy, and say, beat the crap out of this guy. I'm the man. That's what happens. I've been in the locker room. I get it. But now that there's eyes on this and it's a professional league, it's a national league, it becomes a travesty. Are you on the 75% that think he should have got more games? Or are you on the 25% that shouldn't? I don't know if it matters how many games he gets suspended, because the NHL needs to change. They need to remove this from the game if they want to totally get away from it. It doesn't mean you'll never have an injury or another Tom Wilson if it was against the rules. Bad people are bad people. But you either subscribe to the fact that you want to make all the rules to catch all the breakers and 100% of people, which means you spend most of your time focusing on the outliers, which is stupid, because it's just stupid. They're always going to be an outlier. Or you create the rules for the 95 to 98% of people that are likely going to follow them. And you reduce the chances of a guy like this repeating this behavior. It doesn't mean Tom wouldn't have done it once, but he wouldn't have done it 6 times, 7 times. How many times has he been suspended now for dirty hits? He's a predator in the game. He wants to hurt you. If you don't think Tom wants to hurt you, you're wrong. He wants to hurt you. It's part of his game. He's going to hurt you before you ever can hurt him, because he is just bigger, faster, stronger than you. If this game is to grow, if Hockey is to move away from the 8th and 7th sport. Esports is beating it in North America. I'm not just talking about esports in Korea. It's beating it in North America. Kids are consuming traditional sports differently, and a lot of kids don't even want to be part of traditional sports anymore because they just don't make any sense to them. This isn't helping. This isn't growing it. I don't want to be 65 years old telling my kids, I wish you'd go outside and play and do something else. I guess grandkids. Sorry, I said kids. Tell my grandkids to go outside and do something, get away from the computer, because likely what they are going to be doing when I am 30 years older from today is most of it is going to be handled digitally. You don't have to like it, but it's going to happen. Their skill set is changing, and the way they are evolving as people is changing. And will games like hockey and that continue to go forward with concussions, the violence, the missing teeth, the cut faces, things we used to see as badges of honor. I used to see as a badge of honor. I mean, I'm missing, they're all gone. They're my teeth still, but all of them, 5 of them, out, 1 stick. The game needs to change to attract that audience. Other sports are doing it and they're figuring it out. Hockey needs to figure it out, and it needs to figure it out by not rewarding people like Tom Wilson and taking a good hard look in the mirror and deciding whether or not it wants to change. Are they too afraid of losing the traditional fan to go after the new fan and build the new market? Doesn't sound like a recipe for success. Sounds like a recipe for a slow death. I personally would rather die fast. Burn bright, die young. Try it. See what happens. You might be surprised at the results because this is an excellent game, but it's a hard game to teach. I've sat with people who have never watched hockey. It's mind-blowing. I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I didn't think I'd ever meet anybody that never watched hockey, but with all the new Canadians coming in, fantastic friends that I've made, the diverse group of friends that I've made, I have met people that don't know the game, and they've watched it with me, and they're lifelong Jets fans now because they got lucky to sit next to someone who was friendly with them, who was trusted with them, and explained why this game is so freaking exciting. But they didn't get it. It's very hard to consume by yourself or when you're not in a culture or a city that consumes it that way. And that's where you have to grow the game, is in places where they may never have had it before. I've said it before, Austin Matthews never would have been a fan if the Phoenix Coyotes didn't go. So if the game is to grow, it needs to be consistent in entertainment, and entertainment needs to be exciting and fun and can't leave you with a bad taste in your mouth like this does. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a bad check. This wasn't bad luck. This is a dick doing dick moves. So that's my take. I think the NHL has a real problem to solve. I think they're this close. They're this close. 20 years ago, miles, gaps. They're this close. The question is going to become, do you still want the scrums in the game? Take them out. They add nothing. 0. If you think they add something, let me know below. But they add nothing. Blow the whistle. Don't let them scrum. Do you want the NHL interpreting the rules? Let me know down below. Do you like the let the boys play? Playoff hockey is not regular season hockey. It's a different game. That's why regular season teams that dominate struggle sometimes in the playoffs, because it's a totally different game. Do you like that? I'm not saying you're wrong if you do. Just saying it's weird that there's a different game because the rules are enforced differently. And they're enforced different. They're not written differently. They're enforced differently, which is tough. You let me know your thoughts below. Do you like the $5,000 fine? Do you think New York Rangers should go out there, get a fighter and correct it? Do you think fighting should still be in the game? Do you think he should have been suspended? Do you think the game needs to change to evolve? Or are you a traditionalist? There's nothing wrong with any answer you want to give. This has been Coach Ryan D. This is Hot Garbage Sports. This is my take on the Tom Wilson thing. If you've stayed this long, I hope you subscribe if you're a new viewer. 10% of my viewers are subscribed. 90% are brand new because we're just growing. I have a lot of humor, fun, great takes in this game. I've been in locker rooms. I've coached. If you're in, I'm happy to have you. Thanks for watching.